Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Writers Podcast. I have with me today guest mystery writer Diane Bator. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning. How are you, Lou?
Not too bad. Thank you for asking. And you?
I'm great, thanks.
All right. So we're here to talk about your most recent book, which I believe is written in stone, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that is the start of a new mystery series for you?
It is. Yeah, it's actually the start of a new venture for me as well.
Okay.
I had been with a traditional publisher for about 10 years and just left them in January. And this is my first self-published book.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that a little bit later. But before we do, I'd like to sort of peel back the curtains on your who you are and get to know you a little bit. I see from your website that you've been a lover of stories since you were a kid. So I guess the storytelling writing gene has been with you your whole life?
It has, absolutely. I grew up reading everything in the library that I could get my hands on. So,
okay. And did you have favorite genres when you were younger, and have they changed as you've gotten older?
you know, it's really funny. I've always been drawn to mystery since I was a little kid, but I never thought about writing it for a long time. So,
Very good. So at what point did you decide to try writing?
I've always read and written. I
Okay.
remember being a kid lying on the bedroom floor with a pencil and paper and just
Ah,
scribbling away.
oh, very cool. And did you ever get to the point where you said, I want to do this either as a hobby or as a full-time thing?
I think it was just naturally a hobby. It was
Mm-hmm.
just one of those things I did when I had nothing else to do.
Okay.
Uh, I would just sit and write stories or write poetry or whatever. And it was actually in the 9th grade, I think, when one of my teachers, I had written a poem and he dragged me down to the school newspaper office and said, "Hey, put this poem in here. It's really good." So,
Oh,
yeah, so
awesome.
I got published in 9th grade. So
Wow. And that's what set you off, is it?
it kind of was. Yeah. He was really great about encouraging me to continue to write he was one of those teachers, which I absolutely loved. He would read us books in class. He would, everybody put your head down and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And he would read things like Bridge Across the River Kwai, things about World War II and books I never would have thought to pick up as a kid. I always read mystery like Hardy Boys and all that stuff. And I, read whatever I could get. But I had never thought about reading that. And it just really opened my mind to all the different genres and stuff as well.
Okay. So from that momentous moment with your poem, how long did it take you to get your first piece of fiction published?
Oh, that was a while. I seriously started writing in 2007 when I joined a writing group.
Okay.
And I was living in Ontario at the time. And they were really good about encouraging me. Some of them were a little more, okay, you wrote that wrong, or you've got a typo, or, the little things, but they were overall really good at going, you know what, you've got this, like, keep writing it.
Okay.
And it was probably about 2010 when I actually won a writing contest. And it was called Mystery and Ink. And I wrote my very first mystery story. It's just a novella, and I want to relaunch it. It hasn't been in print for a while. And I won the contest and I went, I can do this. So all of that puzzles and mysteries and all that stuff has come full circle. And now, as of, I think my first book aside from that came out in about 2012, 2013.
Okay. So did you like in your education, secondary education, post-secondary education, did you take any sort of writing focused courses or anything, or you just?
I took a few, but I just found it, I don't know, maybe just the nature of the way I write and stuff. I found it too restrictive, and there wasn't that same encouragement.
Okay.
And I ended up going and taking business, which, it's kind of helping now that I'm doing my own business. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I don't have like that writing background, but I've always been a writer.
Right.
So I've always taken lots of courses and that sort of workshops, that sort of thing, done a
Okay.
couple of conferences, and that's kind of over the years working with different publishers and an agent and all of that. That's kind of where I built my background in writing.
Okay. So you've got quite a few series here. I guess we could start with your latest book, if you prefer to talk about your earlier works, I'll leave that up to you. Do you want to, which way do you want to go, from the beginning or from the end?
It doesn't matter. I'm really proud of Written in Stone. As I said, it's my first indie published novel.
Okay.
And it's one that I'd worked on for probably about 5 years before I actually brought it out. And
Okay.
before I actually launched it, it was really kind of fun because I had, over the last 10, 12 years, I've built up a lot of friendships and gotten to know a lot of other writers and stuff, that a lot of them are indie published. So some of them are traditional, but I sent them each a copy and said, can you please read this and just give me a review, give me whatever feedback you think I need. I got 8 different responses with all of these different mistakes or grammar errors or whatever, and they were all different, which was really kind of neat to see. So I'm like, okay, well, it is really a matter of perspective as to how people read and what they pick at, what they notice, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it was really great. So I did all of the edits that made a lot of sense to me and what I thought would be really great and make the story stronger. And that's what I went with.
Okay. So you label yourself as a mystery writer, correct? That's a pretty broad category. Are you in a certain subcategory? Like, do you consider yourself like a hard boiled or a dark or a cozy, or like what kind of mysteries do you write?
No, most of mine are much lighter. They're more to the cozy end. Some
Okay.
of them kind of get to the edge of cozy into mystery, but a couple of them are a little more detective type stories. That my very first series has a detective, that 2 detectives that solve cases that end up dragging them back to this small town, whether they like it or not, which kind of
Okay.
keeps it cozy on the cozier end.
Right.
And then I've got a whole brand new series of short stories that feature a woman detective who, she's just a younger woman in her, early 30-ish. And she's one of those people that a lot of people would be like, I want to be her. I want to be able to say what I want to say and
Okay.
do what I want to do, kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
she's a fun character.
Okay. So with your Written in Stone, who's the protagonist in that series?
Yeah, Allison Cadell, or AJ Cadell. It's Allison Jane. And she's about 25 when the first book. And she's a romance novelist who just wants to be able to spend, like all writers, I just want to spend time writing. I don't want to have to do, all these other things.
Right.
And she ends up getting a writer in residence offer she's living in Toronto at the time. So this is all Canadian based.
Okay.
She's living in Toronto at the time. She gets a letter inviting her out to Vancouver Island. And she ends up going as this writer in residence, going, how do these people know about me? Because, I've only written 2 books and I'm not like a huge household name. And discovers she has a whole family there that she doesn't remember. So there's a bit of a family mystery as well as an actual murder mystery that takes place. So I had a blast writing this one. And I have a lot of friends out on Vancouver Island who went, oh, you got this wrong. Change this. I'm like, okay.
Right. So that's the good launching pad for this series. How do you foresee continuing it in the subsequent volumes? Is it more family drama, or how does she become a detective?
Yeah, well, in the first book, she actually discovers that there's a woman that lives in the same place that she's living in, Thistlewood Manor, and this woman dies. And somebody has tried to mask it as a fire, but it doesn't really turn into a full-blown fire. And this woman dies, and that's when she discovers that this woman was her grandmother, who was the person who invited her. So she's trying to solve the murder of why would somebody want to kill this wonderful little, wonderful elder woman.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, she also discovers her grandfather had been murdered 20 years before, and his murder was the cause of her not being able to remember anything.
Mm.
And it goes kind of sideways from there, but it's, and it just, that's the thing that draws her into this mystery. And she starts, and everybody automatically assumes she's a mystery writer. And she's like, no, I'm a romance novelist. Like, come on. And slowly but surely she starts going, okay, well, I have to figure out how to solve this and how to help. And it helps her, like her motivation for helping to solve these murders is to figure out why she can't remember her childhood or ever being on Vancouver Island.
Okay. And then going into the second book, have you got the idea of what that story is going to be about yet?
No, I've started writing it. And in the first book, it talks about a great big Christmas party that's an annual event. And someone who's will be no longer in the second book. Can't give that away. But okay. Someone else has been planning it. And it falls to Allison to plan this party on this person's behalf. And she starts finding out a whole bunch of other things, particularly when the caterer doesn't show up and doesn't take her calls. And they find her body out along the Strait of Georgia. So it's, so she kind of steps in and goes, okay, well, this is on my property. Like now I have to solve this because now it's personal, right?
Right.
So that's book 2. And then there will be a book 3, which I'm still kind of figuring out the whole storyline, but there will be 3 in this series for sure.
Okay. But if things go well, you would be open to writing more, I assume.
Absolutely. Because I always want to know what happens next.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I know in cozy mysteries, it's maybe not as important as in grittier ones, but a hero is only as interesting as their antagonists. Do you have an overall series antagonist, or is it a book by book antagonist?
It's been book by book.
Okay.
So yeah, the first series or the first book, the antagonists they get brought to justice, they get brought to justice. And the second book, I haven't got there yet, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
There might be somebody that comes back in the third book. So
right. So what about is there a love interest for the character, or do you have a triangle going, or like what about that aspect of her life
right now? Yeah, Allison kind of has a lot. She's been, as a romance writer, she's unlucky in love. She's like given up on that part. She's just going to write about it. That's it. Right. Until she meets the firefighter who tries to stop her from running back into the house. Well, it's she has. There's a whole scene where she runs in to rescue Mabel, who is her laptop. And, and it was a lot of fun because, most people would be like, oh, you can't go into the burning. It's not actually burning, but there is a lot of smoke.
Right.
And she goes racing in there without a second thought, and he goes after her and he gives her what for. And pretty soon it's like, oh, okay, well, they sort of start to see eye to eye on things. And he was very close to her grandmother. So he has a motive for helping her as well.
Okay. And he's appearing, is he in the first book or the second?
He'll be in all of them.
All of them. Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good.
So we'll see how that grows.
Okay. Cool. Now, you mentioned like you like reading all genres, but mystery was your favorite. Did you have favorite mystery writers? Like, I don't know, Agatha Christie or someone else, or
you know what? I grew up with the Hardy Boys.
Oh,
I was Nancy Drew. I don't know why, but I grew up with the Hardy Boys. I love Lillian Jackson Braun, the Cat Who series. She was one that really, I think, got my brain going in that direction.
Okay.
And then it was actually Janet Ivanovich. Years later, before I seriously started writing, somebody referred me to her books. And for a while I had like the whole collection. And then I started going, okay, you know what? We're at book 20 and nothing is changing. Like,
Oh, okay.
she's still waffling between all these men. I was like, okay, you know what?
Oh,
For me, it
okay.
dragged on too long, but
Okay. What was it about Ivanovich that attracted you to her?
I think it's the sense of humor with her Stephanie Plum series in particular. There's the sense of humor. There's the whole mystery. She's a bounty hunter, so she's got to go and capture these guys. And the things that happen are just things that they can happen in real life, but truth can be stranger than fiction, right? But they
Right.
were always very different as far as what she had to do and the cases she had to solve. And there was always an investigation somewhere, not just finding these people.
Okay.
So I think that's the part that appealed to me the most, was just all of the little puzzles thrown in there.
Right. All right. So let's turn to your writing process now, because I'm curious. Uh, are you structured as a writer, or do you write free form? And how do you, like, say for this series, how do you plan it out in advance? It sounds like you've only got the first 2 books figured out. So how do you go about your writing routine? What's your daily writing routine?
I can't say there's an actual daily routine.
Okay.
It's just kind of when I have the time.
Okay.
Right now, it's not too bad because I do have a day job, but I don't work until later in the day. So I have my mornings that I can sit and hang out at my computer.
Okay.
And I'm either editing or writing or having meetings with people that I'm mentoring, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So there's always writing stuff going on. It just might not always be me actually writing.
Okay. And what tools do you use? I'm curious if if you're using any, like, do you just use Word, or do you use Scrivener? Do you use Pro Writing Aid, or
I
any of the other things?
I start on with pen and paper.
Paper. Okay.
Because it just depends if I'm home or if I'm at work or if I'm in a coffee shop.
Okay.
I always have pen and paper. I've always used Word, and it's just my preference. I haven't really explored any of the other ones yet, but
Okay.
Word's just kind of my go-to.
Okay.
I pay for it anyway, so I might as well use
Right.
it.
Right.
Right?
Okay. So do you have like a daily word count that you try to attain, or?
If I'm working seriously on a book, then I will try to aim for probably about 1,500 to 2,000 words.
Okay.
Lately, I've been doing a lot of short stories for Aconite Cafe, which this is my Dash Almond series, is a whole bunch of short stories that I will be putting into a volume. I think for December is the goal.
Okay.
And it'll
Cool.
be about 6 or 7 short stories, which when I say short stories, we're talking about 6 to 10,000 words. So it'll be, and they're so much fun. And I just love this character to death. So
Right. Okay. So you have quite a few series. I don't know if you just want to quickly run through them all, so that if the
sure.
listeners find ones that might grab their attention.
Yeah, right now, because of me leaving my publisher, most of them are not available just yet.
Okay.
My glitter-based series is the first one that I'm working on the first book for, and hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have the first book of each series back out.
Okay.
Glitter-based Mysteries is set in a small fictional town. I want to say, where was it? Oregon. So it's set on the coast of Oregon, and some of the beautiful rocky shorelines and all of that. And it's 2 sisters who have a vintage clothing shop, and all of the little mysteries that come their way and romances and all of that stuff. So it's just, kind of a day in the life, but there's little murders that happen in town. So.
little murders.
And one of the sisters used to be a supermodel or high fashion model.
Okay.
And her life in LA has followed them to this small town. So that just kind of sets the stage for a lot of crazy stuff going on.
Okay. And what's next?
My Wild Wild Blue Mysteries was my first one. And that's the one that it's two young men who have this detective agency. And book one starts off with a bang because it takes place in the big city. And this girl that they're trying to find hops on a bus. She thinks she's going in one direction. She goes in a different direction and ends up in this small town where one of the detectives, his family lives. And they ended up basically bumping into each other in the bookstore one day going, wait a sec. So, and that kind of sets the whole tone. And it's a small town. The main character who has run away from the big city gets involved with this writing group who my writing group at the time was trying to decide who was who. But they're all kind of amalgamations of people, and there was no one person. But that one I ended a couple of years ago with book 5. But I did leave kind of wiggle room in book 5 that I can go back to the series if I want to and add to it. So.
All right. So how many more series do we have left?
There are. Well, we have the H.A. Cadell, which is the written in stone one, and then the other. There's 2 more. So Gilda Wright Mysteries. Gilda is a small town. Everybody's small town. It's the nature of cozies.
Right.
Gilda is a receptionist at a martial arts school. She had a bad breakup, and her self-esteem is bottomed out. And she ends up taking this job. And throughout the series, she ends up stumbling literally sometimes across bodies, about situations, until the last book, which has not been published because I left the publisher before it was. But it is written, and it's same kind of thing as the first series. I can take it in a whole different direction and either make a whole new series out of it or just carry on.
Right.
The last series is Sugarwood Mysteries, which actually is set in Ontario. And I have to think of her name for a second here. Audra and her best friend, Mary Lee, have a small craft shop in this little town. And 2 doors down, there's this shop that is like a new agey, witchy kind of shop. And between the 2 of them, they get into so much trouble. Right now there's only 2 books in this series, but there will be many more.
Okay. So you've got all these series, and as you've mentioned, you're now independent in terms of getting them published. So I assume you're working on trying to get each of the first books in the series out in a timely manner?
Hopefully by the end of this year, early next year. All of the book ones will be back out. They're going through editing processes because I've noticed a lot of stuff that, so they're all going through a thorough edit, and they will all get new covers, and they will be far better than the original version.
Okay. And I don't know, are you looking at a strategy, like say once you get like the one series all out, are you looking at say pricing, or maybe giving the first book in the series away free, and then gradually increasing the prices as they get more recent, or anything like that? Or
that's probably, like, for now, the newest books, like Written in Stone, is priced a little higher. As I'm releasing all of the other ones, I will try to price them just a little bit lower because they are rebranded and they're already out there, but this will be just a whole new version.
Okay. And that must be a little bit of a crash course for you in the book publishing.
Huge. And the great part is, like, I've been doing this for a long time. My first books came out around 2010, 2012. And I've met so many amazing people along the way who, when I said, this is what I need to do, one of my friends in Ontario, Judy Pence-Shalek, had just written her book about independent publishing and said, here, do you want to read this and give me a review? So she gave me her book. I printed it off. It is so dog-eared right now. It's ridiculous. Another good friend of mine, Katie O'Connor, does romance, but she has an indie book out as well about writing indie. And same thing with hers. I've got pages that I've taken out of what I printed. And I'm like, okay.
Very cool.
And I give reviews. Everybody's book that I read, I always review because, you know, I would hope for the same in return.
Right. And what publishing software do you use, or you just go through Amazon, or like how do you approach that?
I'm going through Amazon and then going through Draft to Digital. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I downloaded Atticus, which is wonderful for helping me format because there's a lot of books I need to format.
Right. Right. Very good. I think that's all the questions I got. Is there anything that hasn't come up during the course of this interview that you'd like to mention?
One of the things I do on the side, and I kind of mentioned at the start, is I also work with mentoring other authors or coaching other authors. The coaching part, you know, I kind of hope to be paid. I'm not one of those people who charges an arm and a leg, though, because I know there's a lot of writers. We don't make a ton of money, you know, we want to get our books out there. We need some direction. Sometimes we need some support. But the money's not just there to spend like $10,000 to have somebody take one book and do everything with it. So I kind of go on a person by person basis for, you know, payments and that sort of thing. But that said, I have about 4 or 5 people right now that I am working with. One of them I'm mentoring through Sisters in Crime. So that's kind of fun because we meet once every 2 weeks, I think. And she just updates me on her progress and how she's doing. But I'm happy to do that for anybody who just needs that little bit of support and just somebody to say, hey, I wrote this many words today. So
right. Okay. And they can find out all this type of information on your website?
Yeah. My website is just my name, dianebator.ca. Totally easy.
And that's Bator.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Diane, I thank you for coming on. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I wish you all the best of luck with your future endeavors.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Lou. It's wonderful to chat with you.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you as well.
Okay. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.